There is a myth that human behavior is the result of either its nature or its nurture. That is to say that behavior is either inherent or learned from society. There is no truth to this argument. It is in itself a fallacy propagated by egalitarians. Egalitarians will portray all behavior as exclusively learned behavior, and by proving that some degree of learned behavior is a factor, they dishonestly attempt to dismiss all inherent behavior. The truth is, most behavior is inherent behavior, while some behavior is learned behavior. It's in an even degree of both. Most behavior is evolutionary. There are some dog breeds that are more aggressive than other dog breeds. Some dog breeds that are more intelligent than other dog breeds. A crocodile has a far more aggressive disposition than a rabbit. A monkey is more intelligent than a grasshopper. The same rule applies to the human races, which have evolved along very different evolutionary paths. This behavior is predominantly evolutionary. The desire to eat, to have sex, to socialize, to work together and to compete, are all evolutionary. They are a critical part of how nature evolves and balances itself out. Since white people alone developed successful civilization, the egalitarian explanation for everyone else's failure is white racism. White people are targeted by egalitarians in an effort to explain racial differences. Since, according to egalitarians, all human races are identical in disposition and ability, they portray all race differences as the result of learned white racism, and yet they will also refute their own claims about nature and nurture by claiming that all white people are inherently racist. They ignore the fact that the animal kingdom has a diverse range of dispositions and abilities, and they conveniently dismiss these differences in the human races, pretending that human evolution only happened in skin color. White people do better in civilization because they evolved in harsh conditions where they evolved a disposition to work together, not against each other. White people help each other out and build together, while everyone else fights to take whatever they can get for themselves. The average white, Western IQ is 100, while the average black IQ is 67. Almost half of the average white IQ is a significant factor when it comes to being civilized. Those of low IQ will engage in primitive behavior such as impulsiveness and the pursuit of instant gratification, instead of planning and reasoning. When non-white people fail due to their own selfishness, white people are falsely blamed due to the egalitarian narrative, and extensive funding is put into non-white communities exploiting and plundering the white race with a false sense of guilt for being more successful. The truth is, inherent nature is the dominant force in human behavior. This nature is built in from evolution. Different humans took different paths in evolution. They inherited their selfishness or selflessness from the decisions their ancestors made. No matter how much you try to manipulate human behavior through exploiting and putting down the white race, you will never resolve racial differences because inherent nature is the dominant force behind behavior. Extensive funding is put into non-white minority groups in the name of making them equal. But no matter how much you invest, they will never be equal. Nurture is culture, and culture is evolutionary. Culture is a result of evolutionary dispositions deciding the norm. So the nurture of culture is in fact nature. Culture is the passing on of ideas and concepts such as morality. With culture, humans have a far higher ability to steer evolution in a certain direction. And that is exactly what has happened. Through ideologies, mankind has been steered toward different evolutionary paths. For better or worse, white people have evolved their civilized behavior not only through a harsh environment, but ideologies such as Christianity, where you love your neighbor and do good by them. In ideologies such as Islam, however, evolution has taken a turn for the worst. A small amount of warmongering men have children with many wives, and so their aggressive disposition is passed on and it dominates their evolution. One myth of egalitarians is the twin myth. They pretend that identical twins who live different lives in different places will develop very different traits. They do not. There are many studies for and against the frequency of parallels between twins. The only studies advertised publicly are the studies that show twin differences. They selectively choose the data to propagate the narrative that twins come out very differently, therefore justifying the egalitarian agenda that behavior is learned and not inherent. But these studies are frauds. The majority of studies on twins, what few of them there are, represent similarities between them. This is why you can find many disagreeing positions on the dominance of or exclusive representation of nature or nurture when it comes to what determines behavior. Sometimes, egalitarians will admit the presence of nature over nurture, and, in fitting with their egalitarian cult of equality, they will portray the nature versus nurture myth as being 50/50. The truth is, nature and evolution predominantly determine behavior. Epigenetics is a concept that shows that gene expression is changed according to nurture. This is a common fallacy used to portray all human behavior as being nurture. It is true that gene expression is somewhat dependent on the environment. This is the bridge by which culture is evolutionarily influenced by its environment. The environment by which in itself is also evolutionary. Epigenetics is an evolution in itself. It is the beginnings of the evolution of culture. It is a feedback mechanism that balances out a species in nature. Egalitarians believe in a cult concept called tabula rasa, the belief that all mankind is a blank slate and can be programmed to be anything whatsoever. Egalitarians reject human nature as an abomination that should be eradicated. They portray all racial differences as the result of white racism, and seek to use ideologies to completely control mankind. Any and all differences are attributed to white racism, requiring eternal reparations from white people in the perpetual exploitation of white people, in a futile effort to achieve equal outcomes. The nature versus nurture myth is an egalitarian lie designed to exploit and plunder the white race in the false name of equality. All races will never be equal. All people will never be equal. Some people work harder than others, and should be rewarded more for their effort. To force people into equal outcomes is exploitation and communism.